Imagine this, a desert so silent it feels dead. A land so empty it feels like the earth itself forgot it exists. A horizon that stretches so far, you don't know where the world ends and where the sky begins. And buried inside that emptiness, a place that should not exist, a place that governments deny, presidents fear to discuss, scientists whisper about, and soldiers guard with a shoot-on-sight policy, a place where the world's most classified experiments were born, a place that shaped wars, created monsters, erased people, and possibly, just possibly, opened a door humans were never meant to touch. This place, Area 51. But today we are not just talking about Area 51. No, boss. Today we are tearing open every hidden layer behind it. The ones that lead into time, space, intelligence, evolution, human origins, and the deepest forbidden truth. Why was Area 51 actually created? And more importantly, who or what was it protecting us from? Before we ever talk about UFOs, before conspiracies, experiments, underground labs, or gray-skinned creatures, we need to go back, way back. Not 100 years, not 1,000, not even 10,000. No, we need to go back to the beginning of beginnings. To the first time the Earth tried to build a home for life and failed. Then tried again and failed again. Then again and again, until everything we know today existed. The Earth has been rebooting itself like a broken computer for billions of years. But the most important reboot, the one nobody talks about, the one connected to every secret military base on Earth, including Area 51, was the age of the supercontinents, the world before the world. There was a time when the Earth didn't have 7 continents. It had one, a single massive landmass holding everything, all forests, all mountains, all rivers, all oceans around one giant block of land. And the world didn't stop there. It shattered, reformed, shattered again. Just like Area 51 hides multiple layers of secrets, Earth hid multiple layers of continents. Scientists gave them names: Columbia, Rodinia, Panotia, Pangaea. But the names don't matter. What matters is this. Every time the Earth reset, a new form of life emerged. Stronger, faster, stranger. Life wasn't evolving. Life was being upgraded. By nature, by accident, or by something else. Something ancient, something intelligent, something watching from above, long before humans existed. There is a question scientists never ask publicly. Why does evolution leap? Why does it suddenly jump forward with no explanation? Why did humans, after millions of years of crawling, suddenly stand up, talk, create tools, build civilizations? Why did our brain size suddenly triple? A change that normally takes millions of years, but happened in a tiny blink of time. Nobody has the guts to say it on record. But in private, physicists, biologists, military analysts, a few pilots, even a couple of former intelligence officers, they whisper one thing: we were helped. Not by gods, not by angels, by something that arrived on Earth thousands, maybe millions, of years ago. A species so advanced that our entire civilization looks like a school project next to theirs. And they didn't just visit, they stayed. And that, boss, that is where Area 51 enters the story. The secret that survived every reset. Every time the Earth rebooted, something remained. Something survived fire, ice, earthquakes, floods, every mass extinction. Civilizations died, species died, continents collapsed, but something stayed. Something that humans only discovered in the last 500 years and immediately classified. Ancient structures buried under continents that shouldn't exist. Symbols older than human language. Materials unknown to science, harder than diamond yet lighter than plastic. And above all, stories. Stories carved into stone. Stories whispered across tribes that never met. Stories written in languages separated by oceans. Stories of beings from the sky who will one day return. You think Area 51 is about UFOs? No, Area 51 is about the return. The connecting thread. Why the government panicked. Let's jump to something more modern. Not ancient history, not supercontinents, not myths. Let's jump to the moment everything changed. June 24th, 1947, Mount Rainier. A pilot named Kenneth Arnold was flying his private aircraft when he saw something no human had ever publicly described before. 9 objects, moving like nothing on Earth, in perfect formation, at impossible speeds, and with movements that disobeyed every known law of physics. He landed. He reported it. And the newspapers printed the term for the first time in history: flying saucer. But here's the twist almost nobody knows. Arnold said they didn't look like saucers at all. Reporters messed that up. What he actually described closely matched ancient carvings found on every continent. The government didn't panic because of aliens. The government panicked because they recognized the shapes, the first cover-up and the last warning. 2 weeks after Kenneth Arnold's sighting, something else happened. Something historic, something terrifying, something we still haven't recovered from. Roswell, a crash, a cover-up, a lie that the government still struggles to explain. But boss, what crashed wasn't just a craft. Inside it, there were materials humans had never seen, alloys that we still cannot replicate, fiber-like threads that felt organic yet metallic, and symbols identical to markings found in ancient ruins across India, Egypt, Turkey, China, South America, and even the caves of Australia. The same message again and again: we will return. Roswell was not an accident. It was a reminder. The true birth of Area 51. After Roswell, fear hit the US government like a meteor. They didn't know what they were dealing with. They didn't know if these beings were hostile. They didn't know if more were coming. So they created something no one else had. A zone so hidden that even presidents didn't have clearance. A place where the world's most brilliant scientists would work in total darkness. A place where discoveries from Roswell and other crashes would be studied, recreated, weaponized, contained. And that place became Area 51, Groom Lake Facility, not for UFOs, but for defense, for reverse engineering, for weaponizing the future, for preparing for the return. The first material they could not break. In the early days, scientists at Area 51 tried to break down a metal recovered from a crash. It didn't melt, didn't bend, didn't scratch, didn't burn, didn't corrode, didn't react to chemicals. It behaved like it wasn't from the periodic table at all. One scientist wrote in his private notes, "This material is not from our solar system's chemistry. It reacts to energy, not force. Energy, light, heat, electromagnetic fields, radiation, vibrations, not pressure, not impact." They discovered something terrifying. The craft wasn't built, it was grown, like a living organism. The first rule of Area 51 became clear. We are not dealing with machines. We are dealing with biology. The first body. I'm going to say this clearly. There are stories you hear on the internet, hundreds of them. Most are nonsense. But buried inside those stories are fragments of something real. Somewhere between 1947 and 1954, the first body was stored at Area 51. Not a gray alien, not the classic Hollywood creature, but a humanoid. Thin, long, fragile in appearance, but with bones stronger than titanium. Its skull was enlarged not for big eyes, but for a massive neural structure, something like a biocomputer. Not a creature, a design, a blueprint, a reminder that we were not the top species in the universe. And the most terrifying thing wasn't what it looked like. It was what it didn't have. No mouth, no ears, no nose. Only a smooth face and two dark eye-like structures that weren't traditional eyes, but more like sensors. Sensors capable of detecting pressures, temperatures, electromagnetic waves, and possibly even thoughts. Area 51 wasn't hiding an alien. Area 51 was hiding a warning. The real Area 51 projects, not the ones you know. People talk about Project Blue Book, about UFO tracking, about spy planes, about SR-71 and U-2. All true, all real, all public friendly. But the real projects were deeper, hidden, buried under layers of clearance. Projects like Project Crystal Mirror, a way to detect incoming non-human crafts through distortions in the electromagnetic field. Project Seraphim, attempts to use the recovered materials to bend gravitational fields. Project Oracle, a secret division studying non-human biological remains to understand their neural technology. These projects weren't science, they were survival. Because by the 1960s, Area 51 scientists realized one thing: these beings weren't coming. They were already here. The link to supercontinents, the shock every scientist had. Ancient maps, ancient drawings, ancient structures, everything pointed to one conclusion. Across every supercontinent era, across millions of years, there were shapes in the sky. Always the same shapes, always the same symbols, always the same beings. Meaning, they weren't visitors, they were residents. Earth was not our planet first. We were the newcomers. And Area 51 wasn't built to study them. Area 51 was built because they might return to reclaim what was theirs. The first modern encounter that terrified the world. New Mexico. A craft landed softly, silently, perfectly. Not a crash. A landing. Two beings stepped out. Small, thin, wearing no suits. A policeman named Lonnie Zamora accidentally witnessed it. He reported it. And within hours, Area 51 agents arrived. The craft was gone. The landing marks were removed. The police report was classified. The location was sealed. But the message the beings left behind was simple. We never left. The president who almost spoke the truth. There was one president, unnamed here, who was given access to the deepest Area 51 information. After the briefing, he said one line that leaked decades later. If the public knew what we found at Groom Lake, religion would collapse, science would reset, and humanity would realize it is not the first, nor the last, species to rule Earth. That was the day he stopped asking questions. The true fear of Area 51, and why all eyes are on space. Area 51 isn't scared of aliens. Area 51 is scared of their technology, because their technology reveals something humanity is not ready to accept. They can bend space. They can bend physics. They can travel without fuel. They can distort gravity. They can hide in plain sight. They can observe without being seen. And we, with all our missiles, jets, satellites, and armies, are insects next to them. The world doesn't fear the visitors. The world fears the day they stop watching and start acting. That fear created Area 51, and Area 51 created the world we live in. The story of Area 51 doesn't begin with aliens. It begins with fear. Fear of losing the sky, fear of falling behind, fear that the next war would be fought not on land, but above the clouds. By the late 1940s, the United States wasn't sleeping peacefully. Not after World War II, not after the Soviets detonated their first atomic bomb, not after intelligence officers whispered a terrifying truth behind closed doors. They're catching up. The Pentagon didn't need more soldiers. They needed something different. Something faster than radar, something deadlier than secrecy. They needed eyes in the sky, and not just any eyes. Eyes that could see the entire world. And that's when the desert called. A vast, empty wasteland in Nevada, a place where even shadows died from loneliness. A place where the sun burned the ground until it cracked. A place where no one would ask questions, because only a madman or a genius would build a base out here, and the United States government had plenty of both. This is where the first true secret of Area 51 begins. Not with little green men, not with crashed saucers, but with a plane that could kill you before you even heard it coming. It was called Project Aquatone. Later the world would know it as the U-2. A thin silver needle disguised as an airplane. A machine that could fly so high it almost scraped the edge of space. But the world wasn't supposed to know yet. Because what was happening in the desert wasn't just secret. It was the birth of American invisibility. Engineers from Lockheed's Skunk Works didn't clock in with ID cards. They didn't have names. They had clearances. They had files that didn't officially exist. A wrong sentence, a wrong whisper, and they would vanish just as silently as the test flights that screamed through the sky at 3 a.m. While ordinary Americans slept, the desert woke up, and the air shook with the roar of engines that didn't belong on Earth. Villagers from miles away looked up in confusion as white streaks cut the heavens open faster than anything they had ever seen. Some wrote letters to newspapers saying they saw metal meteors. Some even said angels. A few said demons, but the Air Force denied everything. To them, the sky was empty. Nothing flew there. Nothing existed there. And if something crashed, if something burned, if something exploded in a ball of fire bright enough to turn night into day, the official answer was always the same. A routine weapons test? But what routine test burns a new crater into the earth every month? What routine test leaves strange metallic fragments that farmers swear were warm to the touch? What routine test causes guards in unmarked uniforms to appear out of nowhere, demanding silence at gunpoint? The desert was lying, and everyone felt it. Soon the U-2 wasn't enough. The Soviets kept improving their missiles, their radar, their reach. So the men in black suits demanded something even faster, something that sounded impossible. A plane invisible to radar, a shape the world had never seen, a weapon disguised as a shadow. This dream became Project Oxcart, the father of the SR-71 Blackbird. And here, right here, Area 51 transformed into something else, something bigger, something darker. Because when you build a machine so fast it outruns its own fire, you don't test it at commercial airports. You test it where no one can hear it scream. Test pilots strapped themselves in knowing there was a chance they would never return. Some didn't. Some vanished in the desert sky, leaving behind nothing but a bright flash and a classified report. Their families never received explanations, only a quiet folded flag and a silence colder than the aircraft they died for. The government didn't want questions, not from wives, not from newspapers, not from conspiracy theorists, and that's when the biggest problem began. The moment the government shut every door, every rumor opened 1,000 windows. Strange aircraft blurring across the night sky, lights moving in impossible patterns, sonic booms that rattled homes in the next state, shapes that stopped mid-air and then accelerated like they broke physics. People looked up and didn't see planes. They saw something else. UFO sightings exploded around Nevada, so many that newspapers jokingly called it America's alien highway. But this wasn't a joke, because the truth was simple. People were seeing the future, long before it had a name. What routine test causes guards in unmarked uniforms to appear out of nowhere, demanding silence at gunpoint? The desert was lying, and everyone felt it. Soon the U-2 wasn't enough. The Soviets kept improving their missiles, their radar, their reach. So the men in black suits demanded something even faster, something that sounded impossible. A plane invisible to radar, a shape the world had never seen, a weapon disguised as a shadow. This dream became Project Oxcart, the father of the SR-71 Blackbird. And here, right here, Area 51 transformed into something else, something bigger, something darker. Because when you build a machine so fast it outruns its own fire, you don't test it at commercial airports. You test it where no one can hear it scream. Test pilots strapped themselves in knowing there was a chance they would never return. Some didn't. Some vanished in the desert sky, leaving behind nothing but a bright flash and a classified report. Their families never received explanations, only a quiet folded flag and a silence colder than the aircraft they died for. The government didn't want questions, not from wives, not from newspapers, not from conspiracy theorists, and that's when the biggest problem began. The moment the government shut every door, every rumor opened 1,000 windows. Strange aircraft blurring across the night sky, lights moving in impossible patterns, sonic booms that rattled homes in the next state, shapes that stopped mid-air and then accelerated like they broke physics. People looked up and didn't see planes. They saw something else. UFO sightings exploded around Nevada, so many that newspapers jokingly called it America's alien highway. But this wasn't a joke, because the truth was simple. People were seeing the future, long before it had a name. Area 51 was no longer a base. It was a borderline myth, a place where the desert swallowed secrets before men could speak them. But while the outside world whispered about aliens, something else was happening behind the silence, something far more human and far more dangerous. Inside the hangars, the air smelled like metal, fuel, and fear. Engineers worked 16-hour days, their faces hollow, their hands shaking from caffeine and classified pressure. Every prototype they built carried a single message from Washington: faster, higher, harder to detect. The Cold War was boiling. Every rumor from Moscow felt like a countdown. Every satellite launched by the USSR sounded like a warning shot thrown into orbit. So the desert responded not with words, but with machines. America wanted a ghost in the sky, something so fast it could cross the entire United States in minutes. Something so silent that radar would blink, and by the time the Soviets noticed, it would already be gone. This ghost took shape inside a hidden hangar under a black tarp. It looked like a triangle, a dart, a shadow carved from the night. It wasn't an airplane. Not really. It was something between science fiction and military obsession. Pilots who saw early sketches of it laughed. "Nothing shaped like this can fly," they said. The engineers smiled quietly, because they already knew it could. They had seen the tests, the failures, the explosions, the bodies they couldn't talk about. They knew exactly what this aircraft could do if a human survived flying it. When the first prototype lifted off the ground, operators in the control room held their breath. It climbed and climbed and climbed, higher than any aircraft had ever reached, higher than the U-2, higher than what was considered safe for a human body. The radio went quiet, then a whisper. "Control, I think I see the curvature of the Earth." It wasn't a test flight. It was a declaration, and Area 51 spent the next decade building things that weren't meant to exist. While America believed in flying saucers, The desert was birthing black budget weapons that defied aviation charts. Some projects were so classified that even the president didn't know. Some were so unstable they were tested once, and then buried forever. Imagine a jet so fast its skin peeled mid-flight. Imagine an engine so violent it liquefied test stands. Imagine wings that melted under their own friction. The desert saw all of this, and it kept every secret. But outside the fence, the world began noticing the impossible. Farmers saw lights zigzagging across the night. Sky changing direction faster than any airplane known to man. Truck drivers swore they saw glowing objects rising straight upward, leaving no smoke trail. Tourists recorded bright orbs hovering silently in the distance. To them, it wasn't military tech. It wasn't experimental aircraft. It was otherworldly. And this is where the truth gets complicated. Because while the public argued about aliens, the government watched the headlines in silence. They didn't confirm. They didn't deny. They let the rumors grow. Why? Because the truth was more terrifying than any alien story. The US was building aircraft so advanced, the human mind had no category for it. If people thought they were seeing extraterrestrial vehicles, good. It kept the Soviets guessing. It kept the public distracted. It kept journalists confused. But there was a darker side to this silence. Some test flights failed, catastrophically. When they did, security teams arrived before the flames died out. They blocked the roads. They confiscated cameras. They told witnesses to forget what they saw. Not politely, not gently, but with a tone that said, "If you speak, you won't ever be found." Meanwhile, back at the facility, new blueprints appeared every week. Ideas so wild they felt insane. Hypersonic craft that could cross the Atlantic in 12 minutes. Planes with no windows, controlled entirely by instruments. V-shaped objects that created shockwaves without sound. Weapons that could lock onto targets from the edge of space. Some worked, many did not, but Area 51 kept building, and failing, and building again. Because innovation lives where mistakes are allowed to remain invisible. And the desert made sure mistakes were buried deeper than bodies. By the late 1980s, something strange happened. The number of UFO sightings near Nevada tripled. People didn't just see lights anymore. They saw shapes, sharp angles, black triangles, objects larger than commercial planes, moving silently like they were gliding on air. Videos emerged of crafts with no exhaust, no wings, no sound. The world thought, this is alien technology. But the truth? These sightings lined up perfectly with the testing schedule of a new aircraft, one the world didn't learn about until years later. The F-117 Nighthawk, the first operational stealth fighter in history. Everyone called it extraterrestrial when they saw it. And honestly, who could blame them? It didn't look like it came from a factory. It looked like it came from a nightmare. But Area 51 wasn't done, not even close. Because the next project they tested would blow open a secret the world still argues about today. A project so strange, so misunderstood, so classified, that even now, documents about it remain locked away under levels of clearance most people don't even know exist. The deeper you look into Area 51, the more you realize something. It was never just a base. It was a strategic weapon built out of paranoia. A product of two giants staring at each other through the smoke of nuclear fear. The United States and the Soviet Union, while the public lived their normal lives, eating breakfast, going to work, raising kids. The world's most dangerous chess match was unfolding behind the desert sun. And in this silent war of spies and satellites, Area 51 was becoming something far bigger than a secret airfield. It became the eye of the storm, the only place where the US could test machines so advanced that even mentioning their existence could tilt the balance of world power. After the U-2 spy plane began revealing the USSR's nuclear playground, Washington became addicted to one thing: knowledge. Not diplomacy, not peace, pure unstoppable intelligence. And the Soviets? They weren't sitting quietly either. They were building missiles capable of erasing entire cities. They were tracking every American aircraft. They were pushing their own scientists to break past the limits of physics. This wasn't competition. This was fear evolving into technology. And with every whisper of a new Soviet weapon, with every rumor of missiles hidden in the Arctic, with every scrap of intelligence that suggested the USSR was gaining ground, the US military turned to one place: Area 51, the sandbox of impossible ideas, the birthplace of machines the world wasn't ready to see. Inside those hangars, the goal wasn't to be better. It was to be untouchable. To create something so fast, so invisible, so untouchable that no Soviet radar could even recognize it. This is where the stakes became astronomical. One mistake meant nuclear consequences. One flaw meant entire cities wiped off the map. Area 51 engineers weren't designing planes. They were designing survival. And as the world tense up, as both superpowers pointed thousands of warheads at each other, as every politician smiled on camera while panicking behind closed doors, Area 51 quietly prepared the next evolution of American dominance, the next machine, the next ghost, the next weapon that would rewrite the Cold War. But nobody outside the desert knew what was coming next. Because what rolled out of Groom Lake in the following years was something that didn't look like technology from Earth, something that would change the game forever. The world didn't know it yet. But by the early 1960s, Area 51 was about to unleash a creation that would permanently reshape the meaning of classified, a machine so far ahead of its time that even modern militaries still whisper about it with disbelief. This wasn't just an aircraft. This was a declaration of supremacy. The Cold War was intensifying. Soviet radars were evolving, missiles were getting faster, and Washington's fear was growing by the day. They needed something that didn't just fly higher than the U-2. They needed something that outran missiles, outsmarted radars, and terrified the enemy just by existing. Inside Groom Lake, hundreds of nameless engineers worked under the weight of impossible deadlines. They slept on cots inside hangars, lived off coffee and adrenaline, and kept silent even to their own families. Because they weren't just building hardware, they were building a miracle under pressure. The challenge was insane. Create a jet that flies at 3x the speed of sound. Make it cruise at 90,000 feet. Make it invisible to the best radars the USSR had. Make it able to cross countries before anyone even realized it was there. Impossible? Yes. Necessary? Absolutely. And that's when a strange object began to take shape inside the hangars. A long, sharp, predatory silhouette, black as a void, angles mathematically carved to twist radar waves. A body shaped like something that didn't belong in the sky of 1962. It was the A-12, the father of the legendary SR-71. When test pilots first saw it, they didn't see a plane. They saw a missile with wings, a creature built for one purpose: outrun the world. But building it wasn't the hard part. Keeping it alive was. At Mach 3, the air around the aircraft turned into plasma. The friction could melt steel. So engineers forged a skin out of titanium, a metal so rare the CIA had to secretly buy it from the Soviet Union itself. Yes, the US built its most dangerous spy plane, using titanium smuggled from the very enemy it was designed to spy on. That's the kind of irony Area 51 was born from. Every test flight was a gamble. Pilots risked their lives. Engines exploded. Wings cracked. Entire prototypes shattered midair from heat alone. But the engineers didn't stop. They couldn't stop. Because every hour they wasted meant the Soviets had one more hour to move their missiles, hide their secrets, or outsmart America's intelligence networks. Then finally, after months of failures, injuries, and silent funerals nobody talked about, the impossible happened. On a cold morning over the Nevada desert, the A-12 lifted off, climbed higher, and then vanished from radar. Test operators stared at blank screens. Seconds later, a sonic boom rolled across the valley like a war drum. The jet had sliced through the sky faster than anything humans had ever controlled. Everyone inside the control room knew the truth. The Cold War had a new king, and it lived inside Area 51. When the A-12 flew over enemy territory, it didn't avoid missiles. It outran them. Missiles launched, tracked, and died in the wind long before reaching it. No Soviet system could touch it. But this was only the beginning. Because if the A-12 was the warning shot, the real monster, the one still classified today, was waiting deeper inside the desert. Something shaped in angles humans didn't design alone. Something too advanced for the era. Something that even today sends researchers into rabbit holes of speculation. And Area 51 was preparing to test it next. The A-12 proved that Area 51 could break the laws of aviation. But what came next didn't just break the laws, it rewrote them. Because while the world was obsessed with missiles and nuclear tests, hidden beneath the Nevada desert, engineers at Area 51 were working on something no nation had ever attempted. Not a jet, not a bomber, not a rocket, but a craft shaped like a perfect triangle, silent, motionless, hovering, something that didn't fly like an aircraft, but behaved more like a piece of geometry cut out of reality. Let me take you there. The first sighting inside Groom Lake. Night in the desert is unlike anywhere else. No clouds, no noise, no movement, just a black canvas stretching forever. And it was on one of those nights, long after shifts ended, long after the base shut down, that a group of technicians saw a shadow break the horizon. Not flying, not landing, just appearing. A triangle, sharp, symmetrical, edges glowing faintly like heat signatures, but without flames, without exhaust, without any engine noise at all. It hovered 30 feet above the runway, still, motionless, like someone had paused it in midair. One technician whispered, "That's not ours." But someone standing behind him replied in a cold, flat voice, "It is now." The project nickname, TR-3B. Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's the most whispered about craft in military history. The public called it the Black Triangle. Inside Area 51, they called it something else. Astra, anti-gravity demonstrator, triangular reconnaissance asset. The TR-3B, not a plane, not a drone, not a spacecraft. Something in between, from a category humanity wasn't supposed to touch until the next century. But Area 51 touched it early, very early. How did it move? Engineers said it moved like the laws of inertia didn't apply. From standstill to instant acceleration, 90-degree turns at impossible angles, hovering without visible thrusters, zero vibration, zero sound, zero heat trail. One pilot, who later left the program, anonymously described it as, like someone took the gravity under it, squeezed it, and the ship fell into the hole, not upward thrust, not downward lift, something entirely different, something that traditional science still struggles to explain. Where did the tech come from? That is the question nobody at the base wanted to answer. Because when engineers were asked how the propulsion worked, they didn't answer with equations. They answered with silence. Some whispered it was experimental nuclear plasma reactors. Others whispered it was reverse-engineered tech from objects that crashed decades earlier, objects the government denies even exist. But one rumor spread through Area 51 more than any other. We didn't invent it. We just figured out how to turn it on. The test night that shut down the base. According to declassified interview notes, there was one night during TR-3B testing when everything went wrong. In the end, after all the leaked documents, the classified test flights, the radar anomalies, the voices of insiders who spoke too softly and the officials who denied too loudly, one truth remains. Area 51 was never built to hide one secret. It was built to hide the idea that secrets this powerful can exist at all. For decades, the world argued, aliens or technology, cover-up or misunderstanding, myth or machinery. But those questions were never the real puzzle. The real puzzle was something far more uncomfortable, something we were never supposed to ask. If this is what leaked, what never leaked at all? Because the most terrifying thing about Area 51 isn't the strange craft, or the whispered experiments, or the blurred shapes moving silently across desert skies. It's the silence of a facility with no public accountability, the silence of a place whose purpose changes with every generation, the silence of technology decades ahead of anything we're allowed to see. Think about it. If prototypes from the 1960s could outrun every radar on Earth, if classified aircraft from the 1980s could mimic signatures we still can't fully explain, then what is being tested today? And why can't we see it? Maybe it's because the truth is far larger than the alien theories, far more advanced than reverse engineering legends, far more consequential than the sightings we argue about online. Maybe the truth is this: Area 51 is not a relic of the Cold War. It is the blueprint for the future of global power, a future where nations don't compete on tanks or jets or missiles, but on silence, on secrecy, on whatever lives behind locked desert hangars. And somewhere inside that silent race, in a place where no journalist can enter, no camera can film, and no citizen can question, the next great leap of human technology may already exist. Hidden, perfected, waiting for a world that may not be ready yet. Because the most dangerous discoveries in history were not the ones we found too late, but the ones we found too early. And perhaps that is why the doors stay closed. Not to hide them from us, but to hide us from them. And if you've made it to the end of this journey, you now carry the one thing Area 51 fears most: awareness. Awareness changes how people think. Awareness forces questions. Awareness demands answers. And answers, they are the one thing secrecy can never survive. So if you're ready to keep pushing, if you want the next classified chapter, if you want to open the next locked door the world is afraid to touch, you know exactly what to do. Subscribe, because the truth doesn't hide forever. It only waits for the right person to look for it.